Welcome to For Your Amusement, a theme park podcast that aims to exhaustively evaluate the world's most popular theme park attractions to determine if they are world-class. I'm Brian Bergara.
I'm Byron Marin.
And for this episode's featured attraction, we try to get the scoop on the scoops to discuss the amazing adventures of Spider-Man in Universal's Islands of Adventure. And joining us with webs... What the fuck does this mean, Ryan? Joining us with webs on the web is none other than Tyler Pugh from the YouTube channel, The Pugh 2.
Hey, guys.
I don't know what I was thinking when I was writing that. Either way, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, please like and subscribe to keep us alive if you're watching the video version over on youtube.com/@FYApod, or if you're listening to the audio version, subscribe and rate the podcast 5 stars, please. And consider supporting us on our fourth wall, which is a different version of Patreon. You can join our fourth wall and become a park hopper, as we're calling it, by heading to FYApod.com. Not only will help us keep this madness going, but you'll get up to 3 monthly bonus shows in addition to the free main show you're tuning into now. And finally, it's also where our merch is as well, if you're into that kind of thing. All that aside, Spider-Man. When we have a guest come on the show, we do always ask them to name a couple rides they'd like to cover. And this was on your list, Tyler. Why Spider-Man?
When I think about the first time I ever went to Islands of Adventure, I remember just being blown away by this new, because I believe Spider-Man was one of the first ride vehicles and like one of the first rides to integrate like the 3D technology with a moving vehicle. I remember just being blown away by it. And then sometime later when it got its refurbishment, I went back and I was just like, oh, this ride is, 15 years old and it's still incredible. So
we'll talk a little bit about this later, but it's one of those weird things where it was a ride that invented the technology and is still the best version of it.
Absolutely. Like every time I find myself in Marvel, like I have to get on Spider-Man.
Oh, it's so good.
I think they're still trying to capture the magic that they, or the lightning in the bottle they found with this one.
So there's theories as to why that happened. I read a couple like interviews with some of the Universal creative team of why that might be the case. They didn't like directly allude to the fact that this is the best version, but they alluded to the fact of why this has stood the test of time. But let's go ahead and jump into some first impressions here. Tyler, do you remember the first time you got on this ride?
I was trying to think about this. So it would have been sometime in the early, like I would say 2002, 2003-ish. Because when I was growing up, my dad had this that he didn't want to go to the fairs. Like, so if a county fair came into town, we didn't go to the fair. We went to a theme park like during that time when it was in town. So we traveled all around, went to Disneyland, Busch Gardens, wherever. And then every few years we would be down at Universal. And the reason that I think it was like 2002-ish is because I remember coming down there in like 98 before Islands opened and going through like the exhibit and all that. So it had to be somewhere in that, because Universal was every, like I said, 3 to 4 years. So I'm going to guess 2002 was the first time that I ever got on the attraction.
And your dad, he didn't go to fairs as
No.
Dad, I'm not going to that garbage. Like, we're going to the real deal kind of thing. Or was he just like, did something happen to him at a fair?
No, I don't know. I never asked him that question. It was one of those things that, the small town that I was from, it had a fair that would come in and it would last for like 10 days. And I remember every year when we'd find out the dates of the fair, he would book a vacation like somewhere to a theme park. Like that was just our thing. I guess he would rather go to somewhere that had real roller coasters or whatever. And that was his plan every time.
Tyler, are you suggesting that he deprived you of the zipper?
I have ridden the zipper. I can't say that I didn't go to the fair, because as I was in like high school and stuff, I would go. And me and my brother went on the zipper, and one of the first and last times I ever went on the zipper, my brother cut his head on like the wire. Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
And I've not been on it since.
I was about to say this. You don't ride the zipper rides you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's well. By the way, where are you from?
So just out, it's a small town called Cookeville, Tennessee. It's
awesome.
About an hour outside of Nashville and about an hour and a half outside of Knoxville.
What about how far away is that from Dollyville?
Dollywood. So,
Dollywood, sorry, Dollywood. Dollyville.
Hi. I grew up going to Dollywood. It's about 2 hours, just depending on like
I want to go so bad.
Pigeon Forge. Dollywood is insane. Like I tell people all the time, you have to go to Dollywood.
I hear their Christmas is really good too.
I have too. I don't know do they have their rides open for Christmas?
Well, Amusement today has it rated as like the best Christmas event, almost like unanimously for the past like 2 decades.
The light setup's supposed to be spectacular.
I don't know if I've ever been during their Christmas celebration. I know that most of the time they have the rides open. Like I can't imagine being on Lightning Rod when it's
Freezing.
25 degrees outside.
God.
Like, that sounds brutal.
Just sitting there in snow gear. It sounds kind of fucking metal to me. I want my face to freeze off.
Sounds awful, but the cinnamon bread is worth the trip alone. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, it really is something.
But back to Spider-Man. Byron, do you remember the first time you got on this?
First time I rode Spider-Man wasn't until end of 2013 because that was the first time I ever went to Islands of Adventure. It was a tack-on. This was back in the days where it was a tack-on for many families after doing a Disney World trip. And
Still is for a lot of
because the Wizarding World was recently opened, we really wanted to go and check it out. I, of course, in love with like roller coasters, really wanted to ride Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
So that was a big draw for me. Spider-Man, though, was on my radar because I remember watching a lot of these like travel, like these TV shows as a kid growing up. So I saw like featurettes on like how they made it, which like funny enough has like a young Scott Trowbridge, like leading the charge with a bunch of these attractions. He's got this long ponytail, and I didn't know who the hell he was at the time, but it was so crazy to revisit that footage and be like, holy crap, it's Scott Trowbridge. He has
Jesus Christ, it's Scott Trowbridge.
quite a resume. But I remember when I saw those, I think it might have been like a USA documentary or something like that. Kind of going through all of Islands of Adventure because it recently opened. I remember looking at the behind the scenes of this attraction and thinking like, okay, they're just like overhyping this up.
The result of what we've done here is a kind of experience unlike one you've ever been able to have somewhere else before.
Even back then as a kid, I was like, all these screens and there's no way this is as cool as what they're all suggesting. They all like created the ride. They're just overhyping it. And to my surprise, I came off this ride just like, fair enough, this thing kicks ass. It really is like a unanimous favorite for a lot of Universal Park guests. I believe this thing, I wasn't following Golden Ticket Awards back in the day, but I think this, from like the year it opened until like probably around like the mid 2000s or like over 10 years in a row, won Best Dark Ride.
12 years in a row.
12 years in a row.
2001 to 2013.
Wild. So
actually the year you went was the last year it won. And then after you went on, they were like, okay, we could let it all down. We don't need to upkeep it anymore. Byron Marin's been on it. And
well, that was just, I wrote it fresh off the 4K treatment when they remastered everything. Because I think that happened in 2012. I didn't realize they did so I was like, gosh, like this opened in 1999 and it looks incredible. How the hell? I was like, oh, because it was 4K.
Tyler, did you have a similar experience on your first ride on it? Did you expect it to be as good as it was, or were you kind of taken aback by how incredible this ride is?
I think I was taken aback because I remember one of my favorite attractions was T2 over in Universal
Oh my
Studios.
God, dude, my beloved.
I used to love sitting through T2 and like
Super.
The idea of having a ride that kind of incorporated the 3D technology with like a moving vehicle was just mind blowing. Like the first time you get on it, it's just like, this doesn't exist. And now it's kind of a thing that they're known for, but it was just, I remember getting off of it and just being flabbergasted. Like I could not believe what they had created.
No, that's exactly. I mean, for me, I had watched several Travel Channel specials on this ride in Islands of Adventure, dreaming of going to Universal one day, and I didn't make my way over to the park until I think it was like 2016, and I was the most stoked to get on this ride. So I went in very hyped, and it still blew my expectations out of the water because I was thinking, okay, yes, this was very hyped back in the day, and I know some people still think this is the best iteration of the 3D live integration, but at the time I was like pretty high on Transformers, And I was like, I don't know, we'll see. And then I just remember getting off and being like, nope, that's it. That's the best one. Because it just does it better than anybody else. The integration, especially with the live action elements, it really blew my mind. Why don't we go ahead and then jump into some history then, Byron? Let's figure out how this thing came to be.
Following the opening of Universal Studios Florida in 1990, the team at Universal was very active in growing their new Orlando resort and quickly had their sights set on a second park. It is important to note that original concepts for this second Orlando park were very, very different from the park you are probably familiar with today. You see, back in the early 90s, Universal was trying to do the opposite of what Disney and Michael Eisner were trying to do at the time. Back then, Universal's head of parks, Jay Stein, was keen on developing a park that could better appeal to younger audiences. This aptly spawned the development of Cartoon World. Jay Stein felt that to best pull this off, they would need to strike a deal with Time Warner to obtain the rights to a healthy supply of animated characters, and most importantly, an extremely popular collection of superheroes from an extremely popular superhero brand, DC. In order to woo Time Warner, Universal appointed Gary Goddard and his Landmark Entertainment Group to design various concepts to pitch for the proposed Cartoon World. I'm going to do a little quick sidebar here, by the way, guys. A lot of times in this history segment, I say Universal, where like technically it was MCA attempting to acquire these rights. That was the parent company at the time. Just so it clicks a little faster when I do this. I've just been sticking with the term Universal, but just for anyone out there like, no, it's technically MCA was trying to make this deal with Time Warner. That's why I'm doing it.
As a thought exercise, though, I have to say, of all the superheroes, the only one that I think would make a cooler version of this ride if it was centered around that superhero is Batman, maybe. A Batman with this kind of treatment would be fucking crazy.
It's funny you bring that up.
Oh, I bet you it is. Was that?
In order to woo Time Warner, Universal appointed Gary Goddard and his Landmark Entertainment Group to design various concepts to pitch for the proposed Cartoon World. This would include plans for...
I want to take that again. I think you said bitch.
Did I? Good catch.
100%.
Confirmed? Either way, I already said this line.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
But anyways, back to wooing Time Warner with this Landmark Entertainment design phase. This would include plans for various DC attractions, including but not limited to a Batman and Robin stunt show that was most likely inspired by Universal Studios Hollywood's Waterworld, a suspended Batman-themed roller coaster, and an extremely innovative Superman ride. I'll also add that plans for this attraction centered around having guests become honorary reporters for the Daily Planet.
You know, I think Superman makes more sense as a roller coaster, but Batman in this kind of 3D live action element where he's kind of like an agent of espionage in some ways. I feel like that would be really fucking cool.
Yeah. So I think early plans were to have like a full on like Gotham.
I don't need Robin though.
A Gotham City sign. Yeah, times were like this is the 90s. This is
the time.
This is like around
nipples.
the Joel Schumacher
This is the rubber nipples
and...
era. If you don't know, if you still Batman films from that time, he had nipples on his suit.
But yeah, they were originally planning to go really, really hard.
I don't think they were hard.
Hard as
I
those
think
nipples for a Gotham themed area as well as a Superman themed area. But unfortunately, all these ambitious and exciting plans were for naught, because after harsh negotiations between Universal and Time Warner, an agreement on royalty fees could not be reached, and with it died the hopes of Cartoon World. But fret not, as Universal would ultimately alter course and obtain the theme park rights for a different brand of superheroes, one with a lot less leverage at the time. And by adjusting the cartoon-centric theme to include characters based on all types of literature, Universal's second Orlando gate went full speed ahead with construction through the mid to late 90s. And on May 28th of 1999, following a lengthy soft opening phase, Universal officially opened Islands of Adventure, and with that included Marvel Superhero Island, a land dedicated to the titular comic book publisher's collection of superheroes and home to the attraction of focus today, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. This thrilling and innovative dark ride attraction would debut to massive praise amongst theme park fans and tourists alike by combining a creative and faithful Spider-Man experience with a brand new ride system that blended inspirations from the likes of former Universal attractions such as T2 3D and Back to the Future. The initial success of the attraction attraction would make it a no-brainer for Universal Studios Japan, which opened its copy in 2004. And although Disney's 2009 acquisition of Marvel would put Universal fans in a state of panic for the beloved Spider-Man attraction, the deal between Universal and Marvel back in 1994 had granted Marvel Superhero Island both an exclusive and indefinite lease on the popular comic book characters, or at least for Florida.
I didn't know it was indefinite.
I think it's like in perpetuity or something like
Yeah,
that.
because it's
I
the
don't think
Mississippi line rule, right?
Universal has exclusive rights east of the Mississippi, at least when it in regards to the domestic parks. Disney has like done everything they can to kind of skirt around this, where they use characters that are not associated with the characters that Universal originally featured in Islands of Adventure. That's why they're able to do Guardians.
I see.
In Orlando, but they're able to do Web Slingers over in California.
I wish they weren't. I wish they weren't.
I know.
That ride is horrible.
East and west of the Mississippi. Let's go. No.
Also an important piece of context too of why the DC deal perhaps fell through and why they went with Marvel instead. Because you mentioned there was not as much leverage for Marvel. I think people forget how unpopular Marvel was.
Oh, yes.
In the mid to late 90s.
Which is evident in the amount of different studios that were doing like films on Marvel characters. Like, for example, when Iron Man first came out, that wasn't Disney, that was Paramount. X-Men, I believe, was 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, Iron Man was 2008, too.
And then Spider-Man was Sony back in the Tobey Maguire days. So Marvel, I think they even filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
They were really desperate. They did not have the leverage that Time Warner had with DC. I think they had a lot of back and forth where Time Warner wanted a 10% royalty.
Yeah.
And then once again, these plans were so they were trying to use so much Time Warner that Time Warner, I think, in my opinion, rightfully so, was like, yeah, we want a 10% royalty. And Sid Sheinberg was really gunning for a 6% royalty. I think they tried to settle it around somewhere in the middle, and Universal was still like 6 or bust. Something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but they really didn't want to budge on those royalties. And it does make me wonder, because I don't hear about this as often, but I got to kind of speculate and think that they didn't want to go above the 6 because they may have felt that they had a good, cheap play on Marvel. Even back when...
Oh, they had a back pocket, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to... Because like usually when you hear about this, it's like, oh, DC fell through, so then they had to, change their plans and like figure something out. Where I feel like they probably had Marvel in the playbook the entire time.
Like a plan B, yeah.
Yeah, and...
Thank God.
They just like, hey, like we'll get the best of both worlds by using superhero characters, keeping the royalty fees down, and then just kind of adjusting the overall Islands of Adventure theme.
Thank God for Sid Sheinberg being a stingy negotiator, because like we wouldn't have had the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, perhaps. Are you a DC or Marvel guy, Tyler?
So I was a big the X-Men show. Like,
I loved X-Men. Yeah,
but I also like when I look back, I think some of my favorite cartoons was the Batman cartoon. Like the Batman cartoon was insanely good. Yeah. So I guess I would say until Disney took over, I was probably a DC guy.
I might be on that same track actually. But then they just wiped them out. Anyways,
needless to say, Universal had a pretty safe grip on this Marvel property or all these Marvel properties for Superhero Island. This became all the more evident when The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man closed in 2011, only to reopen in 2012 with its film entirely remastered in the 4K glory that guests are still enjoying to this very day. But on January 22nd of 2024, Universal Studios Japan would close its iteration of Spider-Man exactly 20 years to the day of its 2004 opening. This, combined with Disney's continued effort to creatively add Marvel characters to its parks worldwide, has once again arisen fears that Spider-Man at Universal, along with all of Superhero Island, could be at risk of leaving us. But not today. Today we bask in the glory that is The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man.
I didn't even know it closed in Japan. That's news to me.
It was news because I rode the Japan version in 2019.
Is it basically the same thing?
It's the same exact thing. The main difference is they don't have a superhero island there. It's more of it's like a New York plaza or street area, and they just have it tucked in there. I didn't even know they had the ride there until just like walking through that area, and was just such a lovely surprise. Like, holy crap. And everything else in that park was like a 2-hour wait that day. But Spider-Man was able to get on in like 10 minutes. So,
Oh, by the way, this is kind of off topic, but Tyler, were you able to go to Halloween Horror Nights the year that Marvel Island became the Villains Island and the villains had won? I always ask people when they're, because I want to see, I wish I could have seen that.
Is that was like 2003, right?
Yeah, it was
Somewhere.
the theme was the villains had won, and there was like apparently in the first week there were like dead bodies of superheroes in the Carnage maze.
Yeah, I think my first year would have been 2009, so I missed that by quite a bit. But I hear people talk about it, and I am so jealous. It's
Me
one
too.
of those things that as soon as you probably saw it happening, if you knew anything about IP, you're like, yeah, this is never happening again.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
not going to happen.
No, it's never going to happen again. And that's why I was like, damn, man, whoever got there, it's like the people who got on the Expedition Everest the first month of it. They got to see the Yeti move. It's never going to happen again. So I miss both of those. That sucks. Anyways, do we have some wait times to get into here?
we do. Tyler, do you want to take a crack at, or take a guess for that, for the average wait time for Spider-Man?
I'm going to say 25 minutes.
Ooh, I'm going to go I'm going to go 15.
By Price is Right rules, you guys both pass on that metric.
Okay.
Because the average wait time is closer to Tyler's guess at 31 minutes.
Oh, interesting. I'm just influenced by every time I've gone to this park, it's been a walk-on, essentially.
Same here. I was actually worried when I was trying to look up these numbers, because I feel like the lower the average weight, the higher the possibility
It's going to
of
get
it
replaced.
leaving.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have the highest wait time ever recorded?
I don't write these down anymore, just because
They're
on
ridiculous.
Thrill Data, all it takes is just a few people to just like throw a ridiculous wait time.
Gotcha.
Like once in a while, so it like could like come off as a blip. So I'll constantly see it, for whatever reason, it's always in 2019. There will be like a highest recorded wait time.
I see.
Of like around 200 minutes. I think this one had like a highest recorded wait time of 195 minutes.
That's a lot.
In 2019. I just kind of have to take it with a grain of salt at this point, just because they're always at like obscure hours, and I just kind of get the inkling that someone is just kind of throwing in some insanely high wait times.
A little Cheshire
Whereas
cat out
with
there.
with the average wait time, you have a much higher sample to kind of actually balance it out, and a few blips aren't really going to make a big difference. So
Let's go ahead and get into some fun facts. The ride is about 5 minutes long with a speed of a couple miles per hour, but a sensory drop, that's how they describe it on the website, of 400 feet, as well as an estimated capacity of 2,150 riders per hour, and an approximate cost of $170 million by today's value, though some online theorize that number is closer to $200 million, making it one of the most expensive attractions ever built. The ride was, by all accounts, a game changer, as evidenced by it winning the title of Best Dark Ride, according to Amusement Today's Golden Ticket Awards, for 12 years straight, from 2001 to 2013. The ride features plenty of real-life elements, such as wind, heat, including a real fireball, which kicks ass, strobe lights, and water. The express sign, I don't know if you've ever noticed, I didn't notice this until I really looked into it. It shows how observant I am. But the express sign, I didn't realize that's actually dangling from one of Spider-Man's webs.
Yeah. So I take a lot of video there, and then when I'm editing, I was like, I noticed it in editing. I never noticed it in person. I noticed it while I was editing footage of it. I was like, oh, that's a unique touch.
Is it sometimes because, like, maybe this is why I miss things, and I'm not even making an excuse for myself, but I will say that sometimes I'm just too stoked to get on the ride that I just like, I'm tunnel vision onto getting onto that thing, and I miss some of the finer details.
Yeah, I think you're like about to show the person your express pass, and then as soon as you do, you're just like,
Yeah.
I'm headed in.
That's true. Yeah, there is always that express pass like exchange that's kind of fumbly.
I also appreciate when they go to these lengths to provide details that maybe you're not like noticing there in the in the moment, like at the forefront of your brain, but it's kind of this just a lot of like subconscious details at play that
It's a really cool
overall add to the
detail.
experience.
There are trophies in the queue that have the names of the creators of the ride. A fun little nod there. And we're going to get pretty deep into how this ride works because the tech that they had to develop for this is insane. According to Universal creative Ben Lovelace, this ride was originally a much simpler dark ride. It was supposed to be basically just a train of cars passing by a film until the release of 1995's Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland, which forced Universal's hand to push the attraction to what it is today. And this is just one of many examples, we're seeing it right now with Epic Universe, of how when these two companies, these two juggernauts kind of get into a war, we're the ones who win. Because like I don't have loyalty to either.
Let them fight.
Exactly, let them fight. If that makes me so happy to know that they saw Indiana Jones what came out. All right, here's what we got. I still think Indy's better, but not by a lot. That's neither here nor there. To do so, Universal had to up its ante. So Universal looked to its own past, as Byron mentioned. It looked to two of its own attractions, Back to the Future, which combined a 3D screen with live-action elements, and Terminator 2 3D, which they had just completed and combined 3D with live-action elements. This is also from Ben Lovelace. Quote, in Spider-Man, it was combining all of that together on a vehicle that moves on a track, combining every technology we could think of in one show. End quote. So they basically threw everything they had at it. The EMV, or the Scoops, as they're called within the show, those were made by Oceaneering International, who earned the gig after creating the second round of Sharks that they made for the Jaws ride. These vehicles are mobile motion simulators with 6 degrees of freedom, and also, I don't know how to describe this, but there's something that also allows them to spin in a complete circle, and they could spin 360 degrees.
It's like having a turntable on top.
Exactly.
Simulator.
They could do it in 2 seconds, which doesn't seem that fast, but it feels fast when you're in the car. They also vibrate, too, as demonstrated by the electro scene.
You're in for it!
There are 13 screens in total, all of which are 30 feet tall, and 12 of which are 3D. There's one 2D screen. There's 25 large format projectors that are used in tandem with dozens of smaller projectors to create the illusion of depth. These projectors use custom lenses that prevent fisheye distortion from a nearly 180-degree viewing angle. And many of the screens feature rear projection, the first time that was ever employed for 3D. Typically, 3D films are watched from a stationary position, like Terminator 2 3D. However, since this ride is mobile, the film appeared to be distorted as the vehicles were moving past the screens. To solve this, Universal creatives created a technique called squinching, which distorts the footage in the opposite direction of the way the vehicles are moving, which makes the illusion of everything appear seamless. But if one were to be standing still watching these 3D screens, the screen would be distorting in weird ways. You don't notice it because the vehicles are moving. And that process is actually called squinching, which they patented, and it was the first of its kind. It's really cool to cover an attraction that is literally making up technology that doesn't exist yet. And why the price tag for this was so high. They really went all out on this one. It kind of felt like an all-in, because for Islands of Adventure, they wanted this to be a true ride park, because they learned from their mistakes of Universal Studios Orlando opening with just, I think it was like one ride or something like that.
It just feels like, once again, like an example I think we talked about recently with Pooh's Honey Hunt, with the trackless dark ride there, where as opposed to a lot of these attractions that come out after it that use the same ride system, where it's like, okay, we have this already put together ride system, how could we do this creatively?
Yeah.
This kind of, I don't know if it's just the creative kind of leads, and they're like, how do we develop tech to work with everything we want to do with it?
Yeah.
Because I feel like often, like the original, same with the Indiana Jones, like that's the original EMV.
Well, creative
And
solutions
that-
to logistical problems are always really cool. Like you see this, we talk about it all the time. The elevator stretching room in the Haunted Mansion was just to get under the railroad track, or I'm blanking on the other ones all the time. Here's one item. Anyways, moving on before I further embarrass myself. There are 18 speakers used in the car to prevent bleeding into other scenes. Typically before this, audio would be coming from the elements in the actual ride, but they figured they had to do it in the car for that. And for audio that does come from outside the vehicles, the sound, this is crazy. Okay, so when you go to the movie theater, normally there are speakers that are behind the screen that come through perforations in the screen. However, because this was a 3D screen, they couldn't do the perforations. So they had to figure out another way to make the speaker sound come from the screen. So what they did was they took speakers and they pointed them at vinyl screens so it bounces off the screen. That is how they did that, which had never been done before. So like there are all these like tiny little things that like you don't even think of as a writer that they were like, they figured out while they were testing, and they were like, oh shit, we got to figure something out for this. And it all results in this really cool experience. Here's another one. The original cost estimates to build the sets came over budget by 2 times the amount that they had. So, Universal came up with a creative solve, as told by Thierry Coupe. Quote, "We came up with a solution by printing on canvas billboards. We asked our billboard vendor if they could print the canvas to make it look like the windows were glowing with dimension in a UV ink. Whatever we used in the virtual world, we used the same texture on the physical sets. All we needed to do is render them to match on the canvas. There was an almost seamless integration between the real world and the virtual world." End quote. And this solve also allowed them to come under budget. However, they literally had to invent new printing nozzles to print UV ink, which did not exist yet because it had never been done before. So they did that. The simulated drop at the end of the ride is really only about 10 inches. And the effect of being lifted 40 feet into the air by Doc Ock's levitation gun is achieved by having not the vehicles move, but having the physical set move downward, creating the illusion and feeling of being lifted up. There's so many simple things happening in this ride, but together, the amalgamation of all of them makes it feel like such a complex experience. But really, it's just a bunch of like cool little tricks. It's fascinating to me.
I wonder if it'll pass the Tony Stark test.
Yeah, dude. Stanley has several cameos in the attraction, one of which includes him driving a truck, which is a physical live-action truck, which I very much enjoy. The pitch to make this ride is even crazy. Basically, I don't know why there was this weird constraint, but I guess the Universal execs were pretty strapped for time. So Scott Trowbridge was given basically an ultimatum. You have 20 minutes to pitch to Universal executives. It has to be done on their flight from Los Angeles to New York. And once the flight lands, we're going to put you right back on a flight to go right back to Los Angeles. And you have basically 20 minutes on this flight. Bring your storyboards and get it done. So that's what he did. Scott Trowbridge got on a plane with Universal Studios execs, their private jet, and flew from LA to New York in a 20-minute pitch with storyboards that he lugged onto the flight and pitched these execs. They loved the idea. I guess they approved it, and the plane landed, and he immediately got back on a commercial flight, sat in coach, and flew back to L.A. He didn't even pack a bag for the trip. So he literally sold this ride at like 35,000 feet. It's crazy.
Definitely pre-Zoom days.
Pre-Zoom for sure. Insane. Maya was the computer rendering software which was employed to make the ride, and while it's a household name now among animators, I believe that's actually what they used for the King Kong 360 3D experience. At the time of this ride's creation, this program was still in beta, and Universal and Spider-Man became the primary beta tester for Maya, with excruciating render times. It took up to 6 hours to render one single frame for a 5-minute ride. That's a lot of time. If you're doing the math, I don't know how many frames per second this is at. I'm going to assume it's 30. Maybe it's 60. Even 30. Multiply that by 6 hours per... I don't even want to do that math, but it's a lot. And imagine you fuck up. Like, if you made a mistake and it renders that frame, it's like, I guess we got to redo it. Here's another day burned. That's an entire workday gone. I think that's incredible. 3 scenes were actually cut from the ride due to budget. One of which included the Green Goblin flying. I wonder what that would have been, because he does fly around. So, but the others weren't disclosed by the creatives. And plainly put, the last fun fact I have: this was the first ever ride built that combines moving, motion-based vehicles, 3D film, and live-action elements, as mentioned by Tyler up top. Crazy. They went crazy on this one.
Yeah, it's insane when you like. A lot of that stuff I wasn't aware of, but when you put it all out there, it makes sense, like retrospectively. But like when you say it, it's like they were really trying to create something as they were doing this. Like they were trying to reinvent the wheel, essentially. No,
they had a dartboard over at Universal Studios headquarters of Michael Eisner's face, and they were going hard in the paint. They were trying to pants him in front of the entire theme park world, and for a bit they did, honestly. You could make arguments that if they didn't up their game after Indy, we don't see the continued escalation on Disney's part, because God knows they move like a tortoise. So,
and then I'm sure sometime around 2015, in a Disney boardroom, they're like, "Look, we gotta really do something special with our Spider-Man attraction to surpass."
Moving on to armchair engineering. Armchair. I said armchair, right? Everyone's heard me say armchair. Armchair engineering. What's one thing you would possibly do to make this attraction even better? And we're going to go to fyapod.com first to get one suggestion. Now, I will say there was a lot of people that chimed in here. Most of them said, update the queue. It's very 90s. It's kind of dated. I kind of like that, though, TBH. I don't know. But there were some fun things. Another person also said, make there be multiple scenarios, kind of like a Star Tours kind of thing, which feels impossible given the physical nature of this ride. But this comes from Danger Mahoney. It would be fun to hide a couple animatronic Doc Ock arms on the exterior of the ride vehicle that would pop out when we're fighting Dr. Octopus, similar to how E.T. is in the basket of E.T. Adventure. Just something quickly pops out and snaps at the audience in the scoop vehicle for a quick jump scare, then retracts back in. It's pretty inspired stuff right there. I thought that was pretty cool. That was my favorite one that I read. Do you have anything that you would change to make this better, Tyler?
That's like an insane suggestion like that. I'm not creative enough to ever come up with that. The only thing that I would have said is like maybe a little bit more physical set. There's quite a bit of physical set, but I think like the mixture of physical sets with 3D stuff has always been like one of my favorite elements in some of the rides that they have.
I feel like there'd be got to be some sort of liability, right, of like the Doc Ock arms. But that is a really cool way to think about it, because there's even in Transformers, so much of that ride is like things jumping on you and landing on the car. If you did hide some animatronics like in the hood of the car, much like even like Rise of the Resistance when you have the little droid in the front of your car, it's something that could be explored. That's a really good idea. Better than anything I came up with. I just said, what did I say? Nothing. I couldn't come up with anything, honestly. I thought maybe update some of the graphics a little bit, but that's a pretty weak-ass suggestion. So let's just move on. Let's go to the good and the bad. What are the things that we like and dislike about this ride? And Tyler, we've been starting with the guest here. So what are some of the things that pop out to you about this ride? Why when you get on it, like what are the things you're always like looking forward to seeing?
I love like thrills. Like there's not a coaster that I won't get on, but I have a lot of my family who that's not the case. Like they are not, they do not enjoy some of those things. But Spider-Man is like a ride that I enjoy as a thrill seeker.
Yeah.
And that they enjoy as people who are like almost anti-rides, but they still enjoy Spider-Man. So I think it's just a family style attraction that it's good for everybody. And it's so well done that everyone's going to enjoy it. You're not getting on it like just to get on it with your mom or whatever.
Yeah,
You're getting on it because you want to get on it.
No, you take Grandma on this, it's not going to be her last ride. You take Grandma on the Incredible Hulk, you might want to have a casket waiting for you at the exit gate. That might be it.
That one tries to end me every time I ride it anymore. So
I do love the Hulk coaster. I want to cover that one day on this podcast.
Can't wait.
Some things I wrote here. I love the queue. I think the idea of moving through the Daily Bugle, something I always kind of imagined doing as a kid, because I loved the Spider-Man cartoon growing up. So that's also another reason I like this ride, is it's from that kind of era of Spider-Man cartoon that I grew up with, and the voice actors, I think they're the same, or they sound the same at least. I didn't actually look into that. I should have.
There's my armchair engineering. J.K. Simmons replaces the...
Yeah, that's true. I do like J.K. Simmons better as J. Jonah Jameson.
You serious?
Yeah, that needed pictures of Spider-Man on his desk by noon. But the moving through the Bugle, pretty cool. I love the score of this ride. Normally, I'm not a big fan of when they take like a classic score and kind of like give it like a techno treatment, but it's so like 80s, 90s style that I really dig it. Like the beginning of this ride, there's a kind of like little orchestral cue that comes in when you see Spider-Man, like the silhouette of him swinging over, and then J. Jonah Jameson's over the radio.
Is this thing on? Listen, Scoop, crime reports are coming in from all over the city, and I'm starting to get worried.
So sick. I get so pumped.
The Scoop in general,
yeah.
I don't know, they gave it a purpose in an interesting way where most like you are the tourist, but you're going to save the day.
Yeah.
It seems to work a little better considering the Scoop is going to do all the work, and they kind of preface it as all the other journalists of like fleeing the scene. So we're going to put you in this enhanced vehicle to essentially go get headlines for us.
Trouble can't be far away. And you know what trouble means. Headlines, national coverage. So don't screw this up.
That's actually the next good I was going to say. I love the fact, I mean, I don't know if this is true, and I actually, from the interview that I read with Thierry Coupe and like a bunch of other Universal creatives, this may be one of the first rides that truly breaks the fourth wall. Because, like, you get on Pirates, there's shit happening, but they don't know you're there. Like, Haunted Mansion, they don't know you're, for the most part. I mean, I guess Haunted Mansion, they're kind of popping up at you. But this feels like, to me, the first ride where there are villains in the ride and they're trying to kill you, which is very funny to me. I think it's, like, hilarious that J. Jonah Jameson is like, go out there and get me pictures of the Hobgoblin. I don't care if he has bombs. Do it. And I think that's hilarious. I think that's really funny. Is that something that struck you, Tyler? You're like, oh, that's cool that he's trying to kill me right now.
Yeah, I mean, instantly, that was the first thing. No, that was the first thing that came to my mind. No, it's one of those things, like, as soon as you get on it, too, Spider-Man acknowledges your existence, too.
Yeah.
You know, this could be the most dangerous night of my life. And yours, like,
Oh, yeah.
Doc Ock on the loose. This could be the most dangerous night of my life. And yours. Be careful. Nice shades.
And then nice shades. He compliments the 3D glasses. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm an idiot. I thought that was a theme park guest joke, like a dad wearing like a pair of Oakleys on his cap or something. I didn't realize he was talking about our 3D glasses. I'm an idiot.
It's just clever writing.
Also, like, yeah, I'm trying to think, how many rides do the characters in the ride literally talk to you before this one? Is this the ride that first started the kind of like, hey, you're the tourist, you need to help me out here kind of thing? I know that's like a trope now, but I think this might have been the first one to really do it.
Great. I ask for help and they send me tourists.
Chime off in the comments. I'm sure we're forgetting something. Tyler, could you think of anything? Because I'm really racking my brain right now. I really can't think of another ride where it's like, we need your help.
The only one that comes to mind, but it's not in the same manner, is E.T. Like, you get the little briefing from Steven Spielberg in that sick jacket. That's one thing I've always wanted, is that bomber jacket that Steven Spielberg is wearing.
Dude.
In that, but he talks to you about you need to help E.T. return to his planet and all that stuff. So that's the only one that came to my mind when you were mentioning
That's
that.
a good pull.
But it's a different way of doing it.
No, and I mean, maybe I'm just so distracted by his dialogue with E.T., which always makes me laugh on that ride, to forget that he's talking to me at any point. But that's right, E.T. So good. But moving on back to Spider-Man, once again, chime off in the comments if there's other rides who did it first, but I doubt they did it better. And since I still think this is the best version of tourists in peril need to help the situation, because it does it better than Transformers, in my opinion, by a mile. And speaking of doing things better by a mile, this is, in my opinion, and you guys could tell me if you disagree, this is the best combo of live action elements and screen blending that I've ever seen. I don't think that there's anything that comes even close to it. Because let's run through some of them. 3D mixed with live action. We got Forbidden Journey. We got Transformers.
Gringotts. Rise of the Resistance, but to a lesser degree.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. That's pretty. There's really just that one. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Is there any other ones that we're forgetting? Those are the big hitters. I just don't think it's been done any better. Like, here's a couple examples. First off, like, I love when there is a practical physical set that a 3D character will jump on and then the physical set moves. I remember when I watched the Travel Channel special of this, that was one of the things they were really harping on. So I was like keenly watching that my first ride through of this. And that first scene when you see Spider-Man jump onto the fire escape and the physical fire escape moves down with his weight. So fucking kick-ass. I loved it so much, and it works so well. And you're in from that point. You're into the realism. The immersion is just like there because it's executed so well.
That does make me wonder if, like, Ratatouille was like Disney's attempt to do something like that, but with their trackless technology, because they can't get the obviously they can't take Universals.
Here's my problem
because
with
that's
Ratatouille.
like the first trackless ride from Disney I can think of that went that heavy on the screens.
Well,
like those large screens with integrating.
My problem with Ratatouille and Transformers and a lot of these other rides, for the most part,
I'm just saying, trying to add to that. I don't think any other has done it as well as.
No, and the reason why is like the other places that do this, they have physical elements, but they're really just used as like set dressing. Like in Ratatouille, you see it above you, you're going under things. Transformers, you see like wreckage on the screen, and then all of a sudden now the wreckage is above your head. But there's not a lot of like the 3D characters actually interacting with a physical element in the room that then moves. And that is where this ride, like for instance, Hobgoblin throws a bomb. We see a fucking explosion through a brick wall. Like the fact that even in Transformers, when they shoot the missile at you, that's all, there's a heat effect, but it's 3D. It's a screen still. Like there's no like actual physical element. Like you can't see fire. Or the Statue of Liberty head floating from the Doc Ock anti-gravity gun. One of the coolest effects in the entire park. It's a literal head that you could see floating in front of you. I don't know. It's the physical sets and the movement of the set pieces are just as much part of the ride as the 3D screens. It's like 50-50 to me. Whereas like the other rides, it's more like 80-20 in favor of the 3D screens.
I'm glad you brought up the Hobgoblin throwing that flaming pumpkin too, because I remember the first time I rode that, like I have that memory like engraved in my head of when that fireball and you feel that heat on your, I remember audibly just being like, whoa!
No, and it actually, like, for the first time, look, I love the Green Goblin. I love Hobgoblin. I think they're funny guys. I've always thought they were funny. I never thought they were scary. But for the first time, feeling the fire on my face from that bomb, I was like, holy shit, it would be really scary if there was a maniac on a glider throwing bombs at me. I don't know why it took that for me to realize that it was scary, but when I see him in the movie, he's saying funny things, so I'm like, very funny guy.
It's just one of those moments you'll never forget the first time you experience it.
No, it's crazy, because I didn't know that was going to happen either. Like, and
I think it also helps that the first pumpkin he throws at you, I think it's his Spider-Man's web catches it.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I'm good. And next thing you know, there's a second one coming your way that you're just not ready for. And then you get the...
That's a good point, too. Spidey missed one. And that's kind of scary in itself there. He has spider senses. How's that possible? Tyler, is there any... I'm going to go through a couple more of my goods here, but is there like one thing in particular, other like the bomb that really blew your mind in here? Like a specific detail or something that you isolated?
The falling effect.
Yes.
The way that the physical set moves with you, and I didn't realize you said earlier that
11 inches.
That's insane, because it actually, I thought it was maybe 5 or 6 foot. I thought you actually moved some, but to hear that it's only 10 or 11 inches, that's insane, because you feel like you are actually falling or going up the entire way.
It's crazy how much this movement of a physical set can influence your perception of the movement. You see this with the boulder effect in Indiana Jones Adventure, which ironically this is the ride that this was trying to one up. But the boulder's not moving, the walls are moving, so you feel like the boulder's moving towards you, and in this particular case, the buildings are moving, and it's crazy what the brain is capable of tricking you into perceiving, honestly, and to, like, as a ride creator, be able to manipulate that is.
I also think they
do
a really good job of, and you'll notice it more so on subsequent rides, of how well they plant certain characters and their certain features. Where, for example, Doc Ock has this levitation sort of gun, or this anti-gravity gun that's introduced kind of earlier in the ride. But you really don't get that effect of flying up over the building until till the very end. It's like you get like a threat introduced to you, and then you skirt away from it once again, you ease, and then it reintroduces itself.
What do you guys think it feels like when he hits you with that anti-gravity gun and picks you up? I bet you it tickles. You ever think about that?
Not
think about it every time.
Not until just now, and like
it's a normal thought, Tyler. It's a normal.
I have a feeling I'm gonna have trouble sleeping tonight, because that's all I'm gonna.
You're gonna think about Doc Ock tickling you.
That's when they simulated me going hundreds of feet into the air. I forget me thinking, "Wow, how the fuck is this happening? How are they doing this?" No, I thought, "Wow, like I wonder how this would actually feel in my body."
I'm not gonna lie. The first time it happened, I really did think, I bet you this would tickle.
You didn't think that when like the electroshock, once again, my comic book knowledge is
Electro.
whatever. But yeah, the electrode guy like throws
The
that plug
electric
down.
No, because the
to you,
chair,
and then it literally
the chair,
vibrates.
I know what being electrocuted feels like. I've been electrocuted before.
Well, you haven't lived if you haven't been electrocuted a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying to solder together some wires in a haunted house because my equipment broke, and I put my finger right into the wires, and boy, did I get a shock. Won't do that again. Anyways, and also, even something as simple as there's a part in this ride where there's a brick wall that I forget who crashes through it.
I think it's Doc Ock.
And there's practical brick wall.
That tricked me.
It's so good.
It's the rare time that a projection actually tricks me into thinking it's real until Doc Ock comes through.
And you know why I think it tricks you is because it's preceded by all these great physical set tricks that are more complicated, like the fire escape landing moving, and then that it also tricked me. And I just think even something like that is just a small detail, but really helps keep you grounded, because some of the times in Transformers or any of these other 3D screen rides, there's a lot of the time where I'm not tricked into thinking I'm not looking at a screen. I'm very obviously looking at a screen, moving from screen to screen. Where in this ride, I think it does a better job of blending the transitions. It's just a masterclass.
I think they do a really good job with the lighting too. And then when you have, once again, like you said, those more practical objects in the foreground that you're passing through, I don't think your eyes have really adjusted to focus on that.
Yeah.
On that projection. Yeah, it's so well done.
The finale scene, incredible. Like we mentioned before. Bunch of simple effects compounded on each other. Bravo there. I love the lighting of the anti-gravity gun too. The lighting package of it, deciding to make whatever gets picked up by it turn green and get tickled. The movement of the ride vehicles is also really fun. I imagine if I hadn't, the first time I got on Transformers, I was like, this is crazy. But if this was the first time I had experienced it, I couldn't even imagine. It's next level stuff.
I refuse to believe that thing's actually just moving a couple miles an hour. Even if that is true, it's impossible to not feel like you're zooming through the city.
Well, it spins pretty fast. But I do think this is the best version of that tech. I already talked about the Spidey silhouette at the beginning with the music. I also really, of all the rides where people land in your car, I'm really tickled when not actually tickled. This is more metaphorical, but I love it when Spider-Man jumps on my car and does a little backflip off of it.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. That's all I had to say about that.
I like that he points at you aggressively.
Yeah. And it's a funny ride. That's the last thing I wrote. It's a well-written, funny ride that's paced. When I was reading about how they thought about pacing this ride, they actually had some issues because originally this was a capacity of 8 people per car, but then they realized that wouldn't get them the amount of time that they wanted to get the ride time to be, but it also wouldn't get them the riders per hour that they wanted. So they had to cut some scenes. And in doing so, they saw that as a positive because it made them really choose what was important, and they thought about this ride flow as if it was music. So they really, really thought through each moment and how it paced together, much like a film, and it feels that way. It's just perfectly paced.
We discussed this on the Transformers episode, so I don't feel as bad about bringing it up now. But there are moments in the Transformers ride where I'll kind of zone out halfway through because of the redundancies and start thinking about the stresses of life. Whereas that is impossible to happen here.
No, it's too much fun.
And it just feels like there's more of a through line. Everything's building on each other, the plant and payoffs. And it's funny how many things from the Spider-Man playbook try to get replicated in Transformers. And this leads me to how much I love the finale of falling down what is simulated to be hundreds of feet.
It's chaos.
To get caught by the spider web. That's a signature Spider-Man save. So you really get that authentic Spider-Man experience. Everyone wants that feeling of getting saved the way a Mary Jane does.
Yeah.
Falling from
or when he's throwing tourists off the train and putting webs up in Spider-Man 2 and they get caught by them. It's so much fun. I remember watching that movie and being like, that looks fun.
But it's funny that moment is almost replicated in Transformers, except the only difference is it's Bumblebee catching you.
Yeah.
It really is the same.
Is there any other things you guys want to highlight about this ride, or should we move into some nitpicks here?
I can't think of. I can't think of anything. Everything seems to be covered. I mean, it's
It's a crazy
I'll
ride.
add a lot of like simulator rides or things with screens. Give me a bit of motion sickness. I'll still do them just because I love rides, but I know that I'm like signing up for, okay, I'm going to be a bit dizzy by the time I get off this.
Yeah.
This ride, in comparison to a lot of the other Universal screen rides, I have not had that issue with. I don't know how that works, but I find it to be a rather comfortable ride. And once again, this probably depends on the person.
Yeah.
But it's
all that squinching, dude.
The squinching is done wonderfully, at least for me, and so I find it to be a very comfortable ride.
Moving on to the bads, I don't have many here. I have 2, and I really was scraping the bottom of the barrel to even think of anything. I don't even know if I agree with this. I put not my favorite animation style, I suppose.
You don't agree with yourself?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I think I was really searching. I was like, I gotta say something about this ride that I don't like. I guess the Q switchbacks, I wish they were a little bit more concealed. When you first go into the Daily Bugle, you just see like the railings. Kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. Like, say what you want about the Rise of the Resistance caves, but they do conceal the fact that you're standing in switchbacks. Those are basically just switchbacks with like cave benches. But at least it's not just like a fucking railing sitting there. So, and that's more a commentary of the time of how lines were done back then. So I don't know if that's the ride's fault, but I wish it was just a little bit more hidden. Because they do this even in Velocicoaster. When you go through like the beginning of Velocicoaster, you see those like metal railings, and it's kind of like weird.
But I don't know.
I don't know, man.
It's real small.
Look, I'm reaching.
It is a bit of a nitpick, but I'm also like wondering what kind of railings you would replace with that kind of, because after all, like Daily Bugle.
Well, couldn't you have us like curving through the cubicles? I know there is like, you do see the newsroom.
Oh, I see. Like having those pieces in the queue actually be like kind of like, yeah, like you said, like Rise of the Resistance, having like the cargo serve as the switchback barriers.
Or even in Secret Life of Pets, that line.
Oh, well, that's,
you're going through apartments and the kitchen counters are using.
That's a master class.
Are like switchbacks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just that wasn't a thing of the time, and now it's a little more prominent, which is great.
It's just hard because you're like, I'm in the Daily Bugle. Why do they have railings?
Yeah.
Here. Moving on to the world-class tests. This is a rubric of 10 tests painstakingly devised by Byron and myself to determine if an attraction is world-class. To receive the highly coveted world-class pass, the attraction must pass 7 out of 10 tests. A score of 6 out of 10 leaves the attraction up for debate for world-class pass standing, and anything lower than 6 out of 10 is an automatic fail. This is the grand finale. I got a feeling this is going to do quite well, but we'll see.
Yeah, what do you think, Tyler? Do you think it has enough to make the cut?
I think it's going to get there. I think it'll get there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because sometimes we have guests that like very courageously fight for the attraction that they bring onto this show.
Like the Pixar Pal Around.
I'm not sure how much fighting you will need to do. It seems like we're all kind of on the same boat, or
we'll see.
On the same scoop.
We'll see. Yeah, there it is. Test number 1, the average tourist test. Would the average tourist have a hard time getting on this ride? Is there a long wait? Is there a complicated queue system?
No, absolutely. Like, that's the thing we talked about. 30 minutes, very manageable,
very easy.
And kind of like I highlighted earlier. I think it's one of those attractions that everyone can do. Like, it's very family friendly. Now with Spider-Man being such a huge IP, it's something that people look forward to as well. It's not just some random IP that people don't really know much about.
That's true.
It's something that everybody knows.
Oh, it's just crazy to think about that it was made with that in mind. I think that's an easy pass. Moving on. One for one. Test number 2, the Leslie Stahl test. Would you be willing to wait 60 minutes for this attraction if you've already been on it at least once? Or if everything in the park was 60, would you wait for this? This is interesting because this is often a walk-on, so it's hard for me to put my mind into the hypothetical that it would be 60 minutes. But I'm going to be honest, I would wait 60 for this.
I'm shocked that it is a walk-on as often as it is. If we did live in a world where this attraction was constantly an hour wait,
it would make sense to me.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
I'm shocked that this is so often a walk-on. And if it was an hour, especially as someone who rarely gets to go to Islands of Adventure, I feel like I got to do that ride. And for whatever effed up reason, it's like an hour all day, and I'm making a trip out to Orlando. And even though I've been on it numerous times at this point, I still have to do it.
Because I think it's in the same ilk as an Indiana Jones adventure, where it makes total sense that would be 60 because it's an experience. It is also kind of like a meditation on just kind of human psychology. Like if this ride regularly pulled in 60-minute waits, it would continue to do that for the foreseeable future, just because like it warrants that. Because even when this ride opened, the capacity is so good. I guess I wasn't there. Maybe people could chime off in the comments if this thing was really tough to get on, but I don't know. I do think
I'm
this
sure
still
it
warrants
was
the
in
60.
the opening years. It was like the crown jewel of the park.
Yeah, I would say like until Hagrid's opened in 2019, Spider-Man kept a pretty long and I think part of that was due because people were coming over to Marvel. If they wanted to ride a coaster, Hulk was right there, and there wasn't really anything else. So Hagrid's brought them over, or like Hagrid's has pulled people to a different side of the park.
Yeah,
I think Spider-Man used to be a little more difficult to get on, but hasn't been in recent times. And as far as like waiting 60 minutes, it's hard as a local who I go to the park like 4 days a week sometimes. When I used to travel down all day, I'd have waited 60 minutes all day for it.
There's 3 rides in this park that I would wait 60 for. I would wait 60 for this, I would wait 60 for Hagrid's, and I would wait 60 for Velocicoaster. Those are the 3. I don't think I would wait 60 for anything else, honestly.
And Islands of what?
At Islands of Adventure, yeah. I think it's the only one that's... because the reason being is like this is such a unique experience, and it's the best version of this ride, best version of this system. It's hard for me to say that I wouldn't. So I really do believe I would wait 60 for this. All right, we're going to pass it then. Hell yeah. I was worried about that one. 2 for 2.
I really wasn't.
Okay. Test number 3, the smartphone test. Does the queue of this ride have enough to keep you off of your phone? Now, this is an old queue. Even the screens in this queue are very dated, but, still very charming. There's still a lot to look at. You go through the Daily Bugle. You see some of the workroom. You see the red, the what do you call it? The photo processing room, the red room.
That's right.
You see people's desks.
I gotta say, the first time I rode this ride, I remember like distinctly thinking, "Wow, what a cool queue!" Like, what
That's what I thought too. Yes, what I thought too.
I think it's also really helpful that it leans into that '90s like comic book take or of the animated series.
Yeah.
I think if they would have gone more the live action route, it would blend in too much with like the Marvel of today and not feel as special.
It's one of those queues, unfortunately, anymore, because like we were talking about, the wait time's gotten so low, you miss most of the queue. Like there's a side entrance that you kind of go into, and you just go through like that main entrance into the Daily Bugle, and you go through like the film development room, and then you're basically at the ride entrance. But when the parks are busy, you get to go through the whole thing. I think the queue is great. Like, sure, it's dated and it comes from a different time, but like I think that's the look they were going for. They were going for the comic book, like you were supposed to be in the comic books or whatever.
No, I totally agree. And if you're a fan of Spider-Man, then you got a lot to look at in this queue. And I think even for like a casual fan, it's still pretty cool.
They got like legitimate pre-show loops.
They do.
That you'll probably never like stand and watch anymore because you're just breezing through that baby. But
I think this is a pass.
It's a pass. It's a pass for me. I like genuinely look forward to walking through this queue every time. And when they do close off parts of it and you go straight to the ride, I'm like, ah.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer, right?
I think it's a pass. I mean, I think for me, I appreciate theming is one of my favorite things. And so when something is really well themed, and I know how much time they put into like Easter eggs, I've probably been on the ride 50 to 100 times. Like, honestly, like that's probably a real number. And I probably haven't seen everything that they've put in there. So I love themed queues.
Oh, me too. Queues might be some of my favorite parts of a ride. Honestly, weirdly, if they do it
when they're done right. And I think they really do this one right. So pass.
Pass for me as well. So passes all around. That's 3 for 3. We're doing great here. I wonder if it's going to pass this next test. The Tony Stark test, test number 4. How innovative is this attraction? Does it push theme park tech forward?
Yeah, I think we just based on the like y'all said things that I wasn't even aware of, and I feel like I have a decent understanding of a lot of their attractions. Like it truly is crazy how groundbreaking that it was, and it was just a direct response to something that Disneyland had done, but they had to up it. Like they had to try new things, and that's just like the fact that we've got what we got because they were just pushing the envelope everywhere. It's insane.
I don't even want to live in the world where Indiana Jones Adventure doesn't exist, because then we don't have that ride and we don't have the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. That's crazy, because it would have been just some weird train ride.
Yeah, I was about to say it'd probably been some Omni mover or something like that. Yeah.
I don't know, guys. I gotta say, like, if you really think about it, it could be taking theme park tech backwards because Universal developed such a heavy reliance on these screen-based rides after the success of this one.
I don't.
But jokes aside, this is about as strong a pass as you can get.
Yeah, they invented so many new things.
And we'll cross our fingers, but I think even Epic Universe, a lot of those attractions could be attributed to the success of this one, and they just have to, they just got to fine tune some things. I think they maybe overplayed their hand following this attraction, but it seems like they're course correcting wonderfully. So,
I mean, that's a theme park thing in general. Like once Disney figured out the trackless ride technology, they kind of went hard in the paint on it, and now it's like, all right, let's take it easy.
Even Disney was like, we created this really innovative Toy Story Mania attraction, and then we're gonna do our Spider-Man attraction.
Yeah, it's just silly. Moving on, that's 4 for 4. Test number 5, the Hollywood test. Can this attraction be adapted for the silver screen? Does it have a comprehensible story? Yeah, I think it does. I don't really know how much more discussion you need there, but Tyler, what do you think?
I mean, how many Spider-Man movies are there in existence right now?
And he's fighting the Sinister Six here, so yeah.
And you get your
was it 7? Sinister 7? Sinister 6?
There's 6, right?
Oh God, we're gonna get killed in the comments.
I know.
Doc Ock, Electrode.
His name is Electro. Electrode is a Pokemon. I know. Anyway, the story is there. He's fighting bad guys, all right, and we're there to photograph it.
Speaking of which, that Pokemon is a potential replacement for, I think, the Universal Spider-Man, and then I know like most of the rumors circulate around it replacing the Simpsons.
No, I think it's going to replace the Simpsons.
But some have even wondered if Disney were to ever run away with the license and buy it off Universal, that Superhero Island could potentially be another potential home for Pokemon, but we'll see.
I hope not.
Hope not.
Anyways, this is a pass. 5 for 5. Moving on. The Simpson test number 6. This is going to be the most interesting one for this ride. How likely is this ride to be replaced with something new, a la Back to the Future with the Simpsons? You're the local there, so I think we're gonna go defer to you.
This one hurts. I don't like. Obviously, I don't know anything more than anybody else, but it hurts because we know that there is a conflict with Disney. Like Disney would love to have the rights to Marvel. Like Disney would love for Universal to not. Like they would love to put stuff in Disney World. I believe they would.
No, for sure.
And so, I guess there's always a number, right? Like there is a number. As much as it pains me to say it, like I don't think anybody wants it to go away. It's not one of those things that it's not like Fast and the Furious where everybody's just like waiting for the day that thing
take the shit behind the shed and put 2 behind the ear.
Yeah, people are waiting. Like there are probably like groups. There's group messages everywhere that just talk about the day that ride goes away.
I'll celebrate. I'll throw a party.
100%. I'll be right there with you.
Supercharged party.
But now, like with Spider-Man, I think it'll be one of those ones that is missed. But I do think that just based on everything, I think it's probably likely that it goes away at some point.
I was going to ask you. Your dog agrees. I was going to ask you, Tyler. If in your opinion, I don't know if you're a betting man, but 10 years from now, you putting your money on it being there?
10 years? No, probably not.
Oh wow, even 10. Okay, I was thinking you could go to 20.
10 years. 10 years is probably about where I would say, because I truly feel like we're moving towards these bigger IPs, and Marvel's a huge IP, but we're not using the Disney Marvel, which I think is like the big IP.
Yeah.
And so I think the comic book style stuff will slowly get phased out. Unfortunately, like it's not what I want, but in 10 or 20 years, I'm not the target audience, I don't guess.
No, and like that's a really good point, that it's not even the Marvel that we're seeing. Like it's dated from that aspect alone, because you're seeing the Hulk, you're seeing Spider-Man, but they're not the ones that you see in the movies that you're seeing right now. And then add that into the fact that it's an animation style from the 90s. It's dated there too in the aesthetic. So it's just like, oh man, it's tough. you can make an argument that, like Gen Z, and what the hell is the generation that's after Gen Z? I don't even know anymore.
They're dead to me. No.
No, they like things that are nostalgic, like they're buying handy cams that look like 90s footage. So maybe that could be a saving grace for the aesthetic of this ride. But if I am being honest with myself, I think this is probably going to get replaced. As crazy as that is to say, such a groundbreaking attraction, winner of Best Dark Ride for 12 years in a row, probably going to go. I've heard so many rumors. You know what's crazy is I think this ride is more likely to get replaced than E.T. I really believe that.
Yeah, I could agree with that as well. I think it's just a matter of time. It's just who's going to make the move. I'm actually not even who. It's just when is Disney going to open up that checkbook and give Universal something
that they can't
so
refuse.
sweet
Yeah.
because Universal does have the leverage now, at least to a certain extent, with how good of a deal they have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's soon, personally, but I don't think it's long for the park, in my opinion.
No, and Disney is kind of like Glinda and Wicked, where they usually get their way. So,
Would you guys agree that Universal is hanging on to this more so to keep it out of Disney's hands as opposed to benefit the popularity of their park? Because I think what is kind of working for Disney is that they've probably been waiting to see this thing lose its relevance.
Yeah.
That combined with the popularity of their Marvel characters,
Yeah.
that combination would result in Universal lowering their price.
I think that would be a discredit to the ride's greatness. Like, yeah, maybe
I'm not
is.
talking about the greatness. I'm talking about the popularity.
No, but I'm saying like the idea that they would hold on to this just to spite Disney, essentially, so that they couldn't grab the IP. I think they are keeping it around. Maybe that's like a little side thing, but I do think they're keeping it around because it's a great ride too. Like it would be tough to. People will be upset when it gets replaced.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the big issues with Islands is if you were to you were to close Marvel for any kind of retheme, that's a multi-year thing.
Yes,
and then so now you have Marvel. And you also have Toon Lagoon that is the subsequent, like the next land. You just don't have anything. Like you would have nothing for a quarter of the park. And I don't think they're just keeping it around in spite. I think it's out of necessity. I mean, if you don't have Marvel there, you don't really have anything for that first little stretch.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm not as plugged in to the Islands of Adventure rumor mill. Are there any rumors circulating around of what might go in that area other than Pokemon?
Nothing that I've heard. I mean, people say stuff.
Yeah, people say it.
And what is and isn't true. I am very much a person who, like, obviously I hear rumors because I read my comments and everything. But,
yeah.
I like to be surprised by things. Like I love the idea of just not knowing. Sometimes that's harder. So I don't really follow rumors too often. I just wait for Universal to say something before I get really excited about it.
I wish I could say the same. I love rumors. It's because I start thinking about like what ifs. Honestly, if Pokemon replaced this, I don't want to be the bad guy here. That would be pretty fucking devastating. But also, if they went all out on Pokemon, I love Pokemon, and in particular Pokemon Snap.
It's one of those things where, like, over in Hogsmeade, I did not want to see Dragon Challenge go away. Go and I did not want to see it. But we got a pretty good replacement.
Yeah, I'd say so.
If they were going to replace, if they did it justice, and they were going to replace it with something like Pokemon, I could probably forgive them eventually.
No, I think so too. Especially if it was Pokemon Snap. I love that game. So if they made, whatever.
That being said, have it replace The Simpsons before.
Please take out the don't replace The Simpsons with anything. Just take it.
You can figure it out later.
Just get it out of there. Okay, moving on to test number 7 here. That's a fail, right?
That's a fail for me, unfortunately.
That's a fail for me as well. 5 for 6. Can't win them all. Test number 7, the signature moment test. Can this ride hold its own without its signature moment? Is it a one-trick pony?
What would you say its signature moment is? Because I think there's multiple. Like I think there's so many big moments. Like we could talk. I would consider maybe the fireball being a big signature moment. The Falls also a signature. There's just so many of them.
The Statue of Liberty head floating above you is also a signature moment. You take any of those out, there's still so many other practical gags. It's kind of tough to really cut the legs out from this ride.
You get to meet all the characters for the most part, or at least all the villains. Some could say meeting Spider-Man in that ride is a signature moment.
Yeah, I think this is a pass. There's too many tricks they have up their sleeve here.
Yeah, definite pass for me.
Okay, moving on. That's 6 for 7. We're already in debate land, which we already suspected this would get to, and I got a feeling we're going to do well in these last 3 tests. Test number 8, the premature detraculation test. Does this ride finish too soon?
I think it's like a really good runtime. I probably should have, before I did this, I probably should have looked up the runtime. I would
5
guess
minutes.
I was about to say I was going to say I guess it's between 4 and 5 minutes. Would be, and I think that's a good runtime for a ride. I agree. I think that's perfect. I think you get the complete story and it doesn't linger. There's no moments where you're sitting there, disassociating. You're in it the entire way.
Yes.
And when it ends, you feel like it's conclusive, and you've gotten everything from the ride. You've gotten the full story. But it doesn't linger, so I think it's perfect.
No, I agree. Perfectly paced, just like they were saying. It's a musical, but also a 5-minute runtime ride on a ride that has a capacity of over 2,000 people is impressive.
It's cool. They have the
it's cool.
It's cool. They have that nice slow pace at the beginning when you see the Spider-Man spotlight, and then it ramps up. It works really well. Where runtime aside, it feels like you're getting a full-on Spider-Man adventure, and pass.
That's a
cool.
pass.
It's cool.
7 for 8. That means it's officially a world-class attraction.
Yeah.
Let's see if we could get it even higher in the ranks, in the annals of For Your Amusement history. Test number 9, the exit hall test. Do you see people be physically excited getting off of this ride? Do they have that bounce in their step as they're walking through the exit hall?
I mean, I still do.
I do too.
I still do every time I get off of it. You can dump me off into whatever store you want to. I'm still going to be happy. I'm excited about it. So it doesn't I'll look at the merch happily because I just had a good time.
Last time I was there, I thought about buying some merch. I was like, oh, maybe I'll buy some merch. I don't know. I didn't like the merch, so I didn't. But I would have if I liked it. I'm stoked after I get off this ride
every time.
And it's you get off to that ripping Spider-Man electric guitar riff, a ding ding ding. How do you not bounce after that?
I know we've talked about the music a few times, but it's done so well that it's it sticks in your head, and it's also integrated where it doesn't stick in your head in a bad way.
It's not grating.
The music is it's an underrated score.
I agree. That's a pass for me. That's a pass for you guys. We're moving on. That's 8 for 9. Let's see if we can get this 9 out of 10, which I think we will. The fine wine test. Has this ride aged well? Has your opinion of the attraction appreciated or depreciated since your first experience? Or if it's a new ride, do you believe this ride will age well? Well, it won Best Attraction or Best Dark Ride 12 years in a row, and still today I think is the best version of the ride tech that exists on the planet. So I think it's safe to say that it's aged pretty well, but I'll let you guys chime in here.
The thing I'll say about it is I have taken people on it, and when I tell them when it opened, they don't believe me. They're like, no, that ride's not 25 years old at this point. And it's no, it really is.
Oh, that's
that ride,
super fun.
Yeah.
Do you ask them at the end, guess what year this opened?
Yeah, I'm a nerd like that. I ask people weird questions. If you go to a theme park with me, I'm going to be like, did you notice this or that? And then I've asked family members and friends, been like, when would you say that's open? And I think the earliest I've ever heard people are like, 2018, 2000. And I'm like, yeah, no, that thing's 25 years old at this point.
I remember the first thing I said to when I got on this ride, when I got off rather, was it blows my mind that this came out not only before Transformers, but a decade or plus before Transformers. I couldn't even wrap my head around that because it's so much more well executed and still so modern that I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, the only other ride I can think of where I'm like, how the hell? Well, actually, no, maybe two, because Indiana Jones in 95?
Yeah,
pretty insane that was built in 95, and then Pooh's Honey Hunt in 2000.
Pooh's Honey Hunt is
also
another one.
Insane.
Was wow.
And then I think this one. I can't think of many more rides
You know what's crazy
that
too?
are just your jaw drops when you find out how old it is. Yet,
which is insane.
Still
because
feels ahead of its time.
Those two rides you mentioned, those aren't going to go anywhere. But I do think this ride's going to go away, and that's the crazy part.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's getting docked over a corporate squabble.
I hope we're wrong, by the way. And I know some people in the comments might be like, I don't think it should have got docked for that, but it is the matter of circumstance. Tyler, you're going to say something?
I was just going I hope we're wrong too. Like, I hope it's here for a very long time.
I hope Universal drags their feet forever.
Yeah. Or they just are like, no, Disney, we are not going to budge. Like, just for the sake of it. I hope they're petty. I really do.
Yeah, 10 years from now, I hope somebody comments on this video and is like, hey, you were wrong. Like,
great.
I hope that happens.
I'll thumbs
Yeah,
up that
perfect.
comment. I'm going to check the comments on this
then
10 years from the date of
I'll
posts.
I'll read it on the ride. Like,
And we can take it to court.
Happy to be wrong. But that's it. That ends with a score of 9 out of 10 for The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. Well-deserved. Argument could be made for 10 out of 10, but I think 9 out of 10 is a pretty damn good score for a ride that is now well over 20 years old, which is fucking nuts. Either way, that does it for this episode of For Your Amusement. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us. If you have anything to plug, what do you want to let folks know about that you're working on?
I like the best way to follow anything I do. I cover the theme parks here, and I cover them across the country, but mainly here in Orlando. So that's at the Pugh 2, and then just ride like we were talking about today. Even rides that are great that sometimes go away, ride them while you can. Like, go and experience all the rides while you can. Because the more I'm around the parks, the more I realize, like, sometimes beloved things go, but that's why you got to enjoy them right now.
No, and then you also put up great vlog content of like experiential things you could do around the park. So highly recommend you guys go check out Tyler's YouTube channel.
I will also add that this is the first time we've actually met you, although remotely, Tyler. But you are so authentic in your vlogs that this does not, for whatever reason, feel like the first time we've interacted. And so in addition to how informative your videos are, they're a constant reminder to why we love theme parks so much. So thank you for giving us that.
No, thank y'all, and I had a wonderful time, and y'all have earned a fan in me. I can't wait to watch every episode. There's a backlog. I've got a bunch of friends who've been on the podcast. I can't wait to watch everyone, and I'll be one of the first people to comment on every video.
Yeah, I hope you have 150 hours burning a hole in your brain, because it's good. These are lengthy, but no, we really appreciate you taking the time to come join in. And for everyone watching, make sure to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, or if you're listening, please rate the podcast 5 stars and subscribe as well. And consider supporting us once again by joining our fourth wall and becoming a park hopper, as we're calling it. Byron calls you folks FYA holes, by joining at FYApod.com. As mentioned up top, it'll help us keep this show going, but you'll also get up to 3 monthly bonus shows in addition to the free main show that you just watched. Follow the pod socials at FYApod everywhere. I'm at Ryan Bergara everywhere but Twitter, where I'm at Ryan S. Bergara, and Byron is at Byron A. Marin across all socials. Thanks for spending your time with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you all on the next ride. We're out.